Sunday group to discuss the new balance of power in Washington. Plus, what would you like to ask the panel about President Trump's deal with the Democrats? Just go to Facebook or Twitter at Fox News Sunday, and we may use your question on the air.
Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, and the whole Republican leadership group. And I'll tell you what, we walked out of there, Mitch and Paul and everybody, Kevin, and we walked out and everybody was happy.
President Trump bragging after his deal with Democrats to link Harvey aid to a short-term plan to fund the government and lift the debt ceiling. And it's time now for our Sunday group. Fox News senior political analyst Brit Hume, columnist for The Hill, Juan Williams, Mo Alathi of Georgetown University's Institute of Politics and Public Service, and former National Security Council staffer Jillian Turner. Brit, I want to follow up with what my conversation with the congressman. What do you make of the president siding with, and I can't say it enough, Chuck and Nancy? I love that phrase. And undercutting not only Republican senators, but his own Treasury Secretary is in the middle of making his pitch in the Oval Office when the president sided with that.
Everybody was happy. I think, no doubt, Chuck and Nancy were happy. He got rolled. The president got rolled. And his administration, therefore, got rolled because, as you pointed out correctly, doing this short-term deal attached to the Hurricane Harvey money, which was a must-pass, and therefore a good vehicle to do a longer debt limit extension and perhaps other things as well, is now a 3-month deal. And we're right back where we started, except without the Hurricane Harvey leverage when December rolls around. So it's a terrible deal. And I think the president, he wanted to sign something, so he got something to sign, but he got rolled.
Is it a one-time thing, or do you believe that?
Well, look, you listed correctly for your guests the different issues that now are coming along, you know, tax reform, the border wall, and the rest of it.
Obamacare.
Chuck and Nancy are not going to be with him on those things. So this new so-called alliance, it seems to me, is more likely to be a one-off than it is the beginning of some new coalition that's going to last and abolish, as a New York Times headline suggested today, two-party rule. It's ridiculous.
I talked with a number of Republicans on the Hill over the last few days, and the two words that I kept hearing from them were flabbergasted and seething. And I would definitely put Republican Senator Ben Sasse in the latter category. Here he is.
Chuck Schumer, whose title is Minority Leader, not Majority Leader, just made himself the most powerful man in America for the month of December. This is an embarrassing moment for a Republican-controlled Congress and a Republican administration.
Mo, extending the debt limit and funding for just 3 months, how much leverage does that give Pelosi and Schumer?
Look, I think Brit was right in that the president has just lost a lot of leverage moving forward, and the Republican Party has just lost a lot of leverage moving forward. I don't think anyone should be all that surprised by what the president did, and for a lot of reasons, not the least of which is he proved during the campaign that he was not a partisan or an ideologically driven kind of guy, that he was the kind of guy who was going to kind of look out for himself first. And here he was with the ability to cut a deal with the Democrats that would be completely antithetical to what his own party would want. And frankly, antithetical to what he himself in the past had said, right? I mean, just wasn't that long ago that he was out there tweeting, attacking the Republicans in Congress when they did a 4-month deal to extend the debt ceiling difference, saying he was a terrible negotiator. Look, I'm with Brit in the sense that I don't think this is a new alliance. I don't think this is a new balance of power. I don't think Democrats are going to get everything that they want from this president moving forward. But I think what it showed is that this president is not as strong of a negotiator as he made himself out to be. And that is something that Democrats are probably going to try to take advantage of as much as they possibly can.
We ask you for questions for the panel. And on this issue of the president's deal with the Democrats, a lot of you were as surprised as we were. Beer POTUS tweeted, will this lead to bipartisan legislation in the future, or did the Dems just pull one over on Trump with this deal? But Rick Connor sent this on Facebook. Since the Republicans have dragged their feet on every bit of the president's agenda, who can blame him for trying to find someone in D.C. that will help him? Jillian, how do you answer them?
I would say I agree with Mo and Brit that the president has given up some leverage here in the short term. But to me, that's a tactical problem. And I think this deal really is a strategic victory for the president in the sense that
a 3-month strategic
because I think
victory?
at this moment, the terms of this particular deal are less important than the fact that the president is showing that he can make a deal. This has been the sad story of the first 6, 7, 8 months of the administration has been somebody who ran on the platform of being a deal maker has been unable to cut deals where it really matters for the American people so far on healthcare, gearing up for a big battle on the national economy. I think for the American people, forget the political class in Washington, they don't care so much as we do as the question you discussed a few moments ago with the congressman, is the president a true conservative? For them, the question is the president a true deal maker? Is he really going to be able to prove his mettle on these issues where we need him to come forward? They want him to be bipartisan. I think that is more important here than the particulars that went into this.
But the question to me, Juan, is what is the deal about? And if you're talking about working with Chuck and Nancy, their positions on issues that people care about a lot more than whether or not the president got a deal on border security, on Obamacare, on tax cuts, they're diametrically opposed, I think.
I agree with you. I mean, so if we were to pick out one point where you would say there is some common ground, it would be infrastructure spending. But again, Republicans are going to say, wait a minute, what about the cost? And how are you going to compensate if you're going to put a big lump of money into infrastructure? But as you pointed out, tax reform, he wants cuts for upper brackets and the corporations. They want tax reform that would benefit middle-class voters. You think about the wall. Clearly, they don't support the wall, and Obamacare looms large. He wants to repeal it. They want to improve it. But I would say this. I am taken by the idea that this president, we've heard so much talk from my fellow panelists this morning about the notion that he's a deal maker. But I just got to wonder, we're going into an election year, 2018. I don't see that he's going to get any better deal from the Democrats in an election year, and certainly not at Christmas time when everybody's dying to get out of town. It seems to me, if you look forward, and I guess I'm speaking to you, Jillian, that he just gave up all leverage, that the deal that's coming on the budget will not have anything for the Republicans or for conservatives.
But you can always make a deal if you're willing to capitulate to the other side's demands, which is essentially what the president did. So I don't think it says very much that, or is it redounds to his favor that he made this deal, because it's such a bad deal.
All right. I guess we've all weighed in on that. Strong letter to follow. Panel, we're going to take a break here. When we come back, a lot of focus this week on Irma and the president's deal with the Democrats, but there is other news. Hillary Clinton talks, and so does Steve Bannon. And North Korea surprises the world by not launching a missile. We'll get to all that. Plus, we'll go back live to the storm zone for the latest on the hurricane.
Composure, which I have developed over years being in the public eye, has well equipped me for being a leader. But I think in this time we're in, particularly in this campaign, maybe I missed a few chances.
Former Democratic nominee Hillary Clinton pushing her new book, What Happened?, expressing regret she didn't tell Donald Trump to back off when he crowded her in their second debate. And we're back now with the panel. Well, Mo, in the book, Hillary Clinton blames almost everything on almost everybody, from the Russians to James Comey, Bernie Sanders to Matt Lauer. Occasionally, rarely, she takes personal responsibility. How happy are Democrats that Mrs. Clinton is going to be spending the next 2 months rehashing her defeat?
So first, let me say, I think, in an election that was decided by, 70,000 votes over just a couple of states, it's all right. Everything had an impact, whether it was Russia, whether it was the Comey, and yes, her own strategic mistakes, which from the excerpts I've seen of this book, she is speaking about more candidly than she has up till this point. And so you're seeing, I think, her take more responsibility for the loss, but also pointing to some of the other factors. And I think that's what people have been criticizing her for not doing up till now.
Do you think it's helpful to Democrats to revisit the Clinton defeat?
I think there's going to be a huge rush of publicity around this now. I think moving forward, Democrats need to be looking forward. So I don't think there's a problem with reflecting on what happened if we're truly learning from those mistakes. And I think the parts that she's taking responsibility for, about the fact that, some of the excerpts I read where she talked about how she missed the mood of the country right now, that is something Democrats do need to understand before we head into 2018 so that they don't make those same mistakes again.
Juan, why do you think she's doing it? Do you think she's trying to make a buck, and there's nothing wrong with that she's trying to rehabilitate her legacy, and will it work?
Well, you know how these reporters are. They're like wolves, Chris. And so here, yes, it was money. Yes, I think apparently pre-sales for the book are off the chart. And also I think attention. I think she and her husband love the limelight, and it certainly is bringing them. We're having this conversation here. Do
you think it's helpful for the Democrats?
Well, I think if Kamala Harris and Cory Booker and Elizabeth Warren and Patty Murray, Amy Klobuchar, if they can't get out there and establish themselves in this environment, they're not going to do it. I don't see the Clintons ceding power or prominence in the party as a convenience to them. I think from the political standpoint, I pick up on something Mo was talking about, which is I think Hillary Clinton believes in buyer's remorse and thinks that a lot of voters, especially in those swing states, we're talking Wisconsin, Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, have gone back. So you get a lot of people who were so-called Reagan Democrats, swing voters, who now say, boy, Donald Trump hasn't delivered for me. And their hope, I think that gives Clinton hope that she may have a future here, which is...
Future?
Yes, that's what...
Again?
I don't know. I'm just thinking to myself today. Last night I was having a conversation like that with somebody who says this may be the introduction to the Hillary Clinton point two.
Oh, boy. And meanwhile, let's switch subjects. Former Trump advisor Steve Bannon is also talking this weekend, the self-proclaimed enemy of the establishment, the swamp. The mainstream media is coming out this weekend on 60 Minutes, of all places, to say that he is going to lead the charge against the establishment. Here he is.
They do not support the president's program. It's an open secret on Capitol Hill. Everybody in the city knows it.
And so, therefore, now that you're out of the White House, you go into war with them.
Absolutely.
Brit, how much of a player do you think Steve Bannon is going to be in national politics? How much clout do you think he'll have?
I think much less of a player than a lot of media accounts and current speculation suggest. Breitbart News, which is a popular website, is not the same as being in the White House. His megaphone is tiny by comparison to what he might once have had, although he didn't do a lot of public talking in the White House. I think he mostly did leaking, but I just don't think he's as big a factor as one thinks. He'll get, the 60 Minutes interview will generate some discussion, as indeed it already has, but I don't think from the platform at Breitbart News he's going to be able to wage much of a war against his so-called swamp.
You agree with that, Jillian?
Yeah, I do. I agree with that. I think, I also think that everybody wants to be the master of their own universe and the center of their own story, and this is a way for him to really create a narrative that puts him at the center of all these things, that creates a narrative for him where he was the one, cherry-picking cabinet members for the administration. So it's a little bit of a self-serving journey that he's on right now.
It is interesting, too, that this guy who talked about the mainstream media comes out in 60 Minutes.
Exactly right.
Does an interview with the New York Times. Right. What do you make of that?
Well, I mean, he's going where the numbers are. He's going where the viewers and the readers are. The New York Times, for whatever we may think of it in terms of its fairness, is still a very big voice in this town and in this country. And the same is true of 60 Minutes, which is massively successful and hugely watched. So that's where he went. You notice he didn't. We don't know what he's been saying lately on Breitbart News because, well, it's not the New York Times and it's not 60 Minutes.
I still think he's speaking to an audience of one, more than any, though. He knows that this president is moved by media coverage and what he reads in the media more than anything else. And I don't know if the president watches 60 Minutes, but he does get those Breitbart News clips in the morning. And if maybe he believes that if he can stir up enough there, that the president may react.
I want to get to one more subject, and that is North Korea. Jillian, there were a lot of predictions that this weekend that the North Koreans were going to launch a missile. It's the 69th anniversary of the founding of that country, and that's the kind of thing that Kim likes to do, to celebrate an anniversary. He didn't, but the Trump administration kept up its tough talk.
Nuclear powers understand their responsibilities. Kim Jong-un shows no such understanding. His abusive use of missiles and his nuclear threats show that he is begging for war.
Jillian, does this administration have a clear policy on North Korea?
I think we've got a clear ultimate goal. We, meaning the United States, has a clear ultimate goal, which is not to be Captain Obvious here, but to avoid a showdown that produces a nuclear holocaust. I think the strategy is fairly clear. The strategy is to emphasize diplomacy and keep that front and center, but also to maintain a credible threat of military force. And in that sense, the Trump administration strategy is not different from the Obama administration, from the Bush administration, even going back to the Clinton administration.
So you don't take this
We've
tough
been
talk
fairly
that
consistent.
seriously?
I take it seriously, but I think that it's a rhetorical difference. I don't think it's a substantive policy difference between President Trump and his predecessors.
Thank you, panel. See you next Sunday.